I'm joined by Rosie Hilton from eFinancial Careers, who I reached out to specifically because I want some guidance from you, Rosie, for candidates. We're frequently asked, like, how do I get found, or why don't I get found? I think candidates upload their CV to an eFinancial or to one of your competitors, put something out there, cross their fingers, and expect recruiters to call or companies to call directly all the time, but nothing quite happens. Like, how does the algorithm work? How do I get found?
So the main thing to think is actually to simplify or not overcomplicate how you structure your profile on our site. So if, for example, you're trying to flood your CV or flood the profile with kind of what you think are relevant skills or relevant attributes of whatever you need to be, what you're looking for, then sometimes it can work against you. So for example, if your job title is risk manager, you don't have to kind of fluff around that. It is risk manager. As recruiters, as you know, you will search for, amongst other things in your Boolean search, but you will search for risk manager as a term. So just kind of simplifying it as much as that. And in your skill sets, like keeping them as relevant to what the role you're looking for is. Like obviously if you have those skills, you add them in, but don't add sort of hundreds of thousands of skill sets. And some people think that if you turn the font white and hide it, you'll still come up in the algorithms. But on eFinancial Careers, as an example, our financial services data model is learning from all the candidate profiles that fit that profile of a risk manager, for example, and for the job descriptions that you put up, it will match the skill sets that are most relevant. So if you start flooding that CV with lots of different things, it's working to a negative effect. So if you want to be noticed, try and keep those skill sets as direct or as relevant as you can. Another point would be everything that we put on your candidate profile on eFinancial Careers is relevant to how recruiters search on the CV database. So everything is there for a reason. So fill out your profile as much as, well, get it to 100% ideally. Things like your salary, obviously your skills, your notice period, whether you're immediately available or not. Obviously the relevant companies and relevant job titles, because they're not on there for no reason. They're there for then recruiters like your consultants, that they filter the CV search function like that. So the more the better. We did some research that I think around 30% of profiles on our database aren't fully complete. So if you want to be noticed, be that, the top percentage that is filling out your profile, because you're more likely to get noticed. So there are a couple of points.
So 70% of people that put their CVs on eFinancial Careers don't put in the vast bulk of information asked or requested that recruiters use to search to find them in the first place.
Yeah. I'd say that the most important parts, which we'd see as mandatory, are your contact details, whether it's your mobile number, home, if anyone has those still, your email address, because what you see as a recruiter when you first go into a candidate profile, your snapshot are those things. So if you want to be called, make sure that they're on there. That's kind of an obvious thing. But profile completeness. We are constantly notifying, there's pop-ups when candidates log in to say you haven't filled in X or fill in this to be noticed and things like that. So we're not doing it to bore you or for any irrelevance. It's so you can get noticed more on the platform.
Okay. So breaking down bits, because from the recruitment angle, there's countless times that people apply to my adverts and I'm like, wow, like this person's a large chance of getting that job. And then there's no email address, there's no phone number, I can't make contact with them. But people also like to be contacted in different ways, because certain people just put an email address or just put a phone number, and I send 15 emails and no one ever replies to an email. 3 months later, I get a phone call saying, hey, I applied to your job, you never got in touch. And I go, I did, you didn't come back to me. So it's conscious that you've got to be conscious aware of how you communicate as well, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Do you like to get a WhatsApp, or do you want a text message? Do you like a phone call, or do you prefer an email? What's your working environment? Can you answer calls? Can you respond to emails? And I guess that's almost part then of the process, is making sure that you actually do communicate with the bits and pieces you have.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If, for example, you do have a preferred way of being contacted, it might be worth putting that in the top of your profile, because then at least the recruiter knows that's what you're looking for.
Yeah. And going back to some of the bits, so you mentioned the skill. So we have candidates that often miss out things that are super important, right? In financial services, and genuine advice and guidance for anyone, if you work with products of any sort, get those products on your CV, right? Because rival firms or people that are looking to hire you care about what your exposure is or what your skills are or whatever. Now, I pause when I say that because you've got to be super careful, because people that then go and write a list of 15 different products, you'll get quizzed on that in an interview, right?
Yeah.
So if you've had a bit of exposure but not much, it's better not to put it on. But from what you referenced before, if I just add a key skills list of things that I think are relevant and I get carried away, I'm less likely to get found, when in my head I'm more likely.
Yes. So I guess when I say flooding, that's for people that literally write any and every skill ever. But if you have done it and it is relevant to the role that you're looking for, then yes, then put it on.
Yeah.
But it's just when I reference flooding, it's when people write, they use 200 characters to put skills in just so that it comes up in an algorithm. But yes, that does work against you, especially on our platform, because of the matching process and the algorithms.
Yeah, it makes sense. We see relatively often CVs that have a little just box at the end that just say skills or relevant skills or whatever. And if I'm working, you mentioned risk. If I'm working a risk role, often it will have swarms of risk management terms, but not necessarily terms that they've actually engaged with or worked on because they're hoping to get seen.
Yeah.
But in that guise, the advice here is don't do that, because you're not going to get found. Because
if risk managers have all of those skill sets within the financial services data model, will learn that. So if there are, for example, typically 30 skills that a risk manager has, then that will be picking it up. If it's any more, it has to be on the average, basically. So if there's any more than that, then it will start to get lost a little bit.
Understood. And so people are clear as well, when you talk about filling in those extra skills from the recruiter's angle, when I do a search, if a client says to me, I need someone that can start tomorrow, the first search I do is immediately available candidates. It's remarkable how many people don't put on their CV that they've left their prior job, or that they've left their prior job months or weeks or years before, when I'm seeing that as a massive positive in that situation. But I assume people are...
Yeah, not everyone fills it in, because it isn't a mandatory field, and I don't know why. Because if you are immediately available, you're hotcakes. You want to be seen, and recruiters want to find you, because there are these quick fill roles that are in demand from your clients, and so if you are immediately available, that's gonna hugely work in your favour. Because if you're filtering by immediately available and a candidate hasn't done that, then they obviously will get missed. Yeah, and then they're wondering why they're not.
Yeah, and I think whatever we said before, like debunking myths, I think one of the myths is people have a belief like, if I'm on a 3-month notice period, you're not going to call me about a contract role that starts tomorrow. But the truth is, we're not, because you can't start tomorrow, and the client needs someone that can start tomorrow. So fundamentally, if you lie and get yourself into a process,
it's wasting a lot of people's time.
and mostly yours, because it's not going to happen at the end of the day.
And you're not gonna, if you're looking for an immediately available role, you need to be out of your role. So,
a lot of people don't want to put their salary down because there's endless stuff on LinkedIn and career guidance and career coach guidance and a variety of people giving advice saying, hey, don't tell anyone your CV, because then you'll get this huge uptick and just demand a CV based on what a job's got. From your end of things, do you see people regularly give that information or don't? Or
so this is a strange one, right? Because people that put their salary, is that the right salary, or is it the salary they're looking for or they ideally want? Because candidate behaviour, if you're putting on your profile, you don't want to be contacted by anything less than what you're on, and then you're obviously going to be a bit optimistic on what people are going to approach you for. So we would always advise, and on the flip side for recruiters, to put salaries onto the job adverts. And there is actually a stat. It's 80%. If you put a salary on your job description, you're 80% more likely to get applications, because it's relevant. Like if a candidate goes on and doesn't see a salary, it could be 30k, it could be 200k. I'm not going to waste my time finding out, because it means that I'm going to get contacted. And if it's relevant, I then have a confrontation, which no one likes. So, but on the candidate side, we would always advise putting it on, because you would have more. I don't have a stat on this, but more recruiters are likely to contact you because they know that you're in and around that band. So it's always worth doing, but I do appreciate why maybe some people wouldn't, because it's up for negotiation, right?
It is. There's an awkward balance. To give an honest answer from a recruiter's angle, because I see so many people give advice now saying don't tell recruiters your salary. From my angle, a variety of factors come into it. I deal mainly with compliance and risk professionals, and honesty, integrity, ethics, and everything is the key part of what they do. So when you refuse, you become in the 1% of people that aren't open and honest, and the roles are about transparency, so it becomes awkward initially. When you also refuse, that rules out, I would say honestly, 75% of my clients, because for me to put an application in for anything, I've got to put your CV onto a job portal and it asks current salary and salary required. And if I put refuses to answer or won't answer or not applicable or whatever, you get rejected by either the ATS or someone in a talent team that says, okay, well, this person's not being open and honest. Now, people say to us, well, why does what I earned before matter? Because ultimately it's about what this role pays. But there's different levels of jobs and different skill sets that you bring to jobs. So when we're given a banding, whatever, 80 to 100 grand, for example, most of my clients probably hear 80 as what they're looking to pay. And most of the candidates hear, yeah, I'll take 100 because that works for me, right? And the example I try and give, and actually I'll give an example with having you here, Rosie. Many people may or may not know Rosie's a very talented footballer. But if we compare you as a talented footballer to me as a very average footballer to Cristiano Ronaldo, in theory, we could all play the same position, we could all do exactly the same job, but we all do it with a very different skill level. So he's worth what he gets, you're worth what you get. I don't get very much because I'm not as good, even though I'm doing the same job in a different system, if that makes sense. So there's a really awkward balance where it's like, I get that people feel if you hold that information back, you stand a chance of getting more. But from my 20 odd years in recruitment, what you get offered is based on your skill set, right? People don't say to us, oh, they're on X and therefore I'm only going to give them 2 grand, 5 grand, X grand more. People say to us, listen, we had a rough idea where we landed it. Actually, that person's too good and therefore they're coming at this level, or this person's not good enough and they'll come at this level, and this person needs training and this one needs growth or whatever. So actually that whole bracketing piece is kind of like, where do you sit and how much value can you add on day one? Because if you can do 99.9% of the job, chances are you get the top of any range that may be there. But actually, chances are you're probably bored witless on day one, because if you can do 99.9% of it, what are you going to learn? Where are you going to develop? Where do you grow? So what's the point?
And I agree with you there with if someone's not willing to disclose their salary, but then you've got 5 people that are, you're going to be the one that's left behind, because they're not, because if they're, you don't know what their salary is. It could be completely less. It could be a lot less than what they're asking for. So why would you waste your 30 minutes? So like, time is money. We're in London.
Yeah.
But if you're going to waste your time trying to find out, when you find out that they're on, they're not as skilled as they say they are, or whatever that looks like. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, it is. And that's the biggest advice we give to people is like, you do want to stand out, but you want to stand out for all the right reasons, if that makes sense. And for me, like trust, honesty, integrity, and bits and pieces like that are so important to build that first piece. It's also just to know where it becomes worthwhile calling or where it doesn't become worthwhile calling. Because also I think a lot of people feel if they tell us, I'm looking for X, we therefore wouldn't phone them on something that's 5 more, 10 more, X more or whatever. But actually, like, different industries or different parts of the industry pay different numbers depending on expectation from you. So if you're going to go from doing a 9 to 5, 4 days remote, 1 day in the office, and compare that to doing a 7 a.m. start to 7 p.m. finish 5 days a week in the office, you could be doing the same job, but you'll definitely get paid different numbers, or you should get paid different numbers, because the expectation and the commitment from your end of things is so different depending on which side of the fence you fall on, right?
Yeah.
What advice can you give in terms of people see job specs, they pause, they hesitate, do I apply, do I not apply? Like, any guidance on when they should or shouldn't? Does it make a difference?
Well, I guess if you're relevant for the role, because a lot of people will try their luck and try and go to something a lot more senior. But then that necessarily isn't a bad thing either, because if you are with it, like only financial careers, with financial services, so you might just miss the mark, but you might be relevant for something else that they're looking for. So it's always worth opening the conversation, as long as you're not completely irrelevant to the sector, the role, and whatever. So I think it's always worth having that conversation, but being mindful and managing your own expectation that you might not be contacted, because it's so competitive out there, and you're receiving so many CVs that you don't always have time to go through every single CV. That is one of the demands of being a recruiter. So it's managing the expectation that if you are going for something a little bit out of your range, you might not get a response back from anybody. It might not be down to being a recruiter. It might be a direct firm that they apply for. It's all kind of the same. But in terms of, we were speaking about earlier, like male versus females in job descriptions, that if a female expects that if they are applying for a role, they feel like they have to hit 100% of tick 100% of the boxes of the skill sets that are required, versus a male would be like, oh, I fit 60% of the bill, I'm going to apply anyway. So my advice to females is apply, because I think we're too careful on, as in females, sorry, speaking for females, I guess. We're too careful on what our expectations of ourselves and always expect more from ourselves, when actually, like, the guys that take a punt are usually the ones that will get it, because it's like, what's the quote from Richard Branson is, say yes and learn some things later. Because if you've got the will and you've got the skill set, that's part of going into a role, is that you've got to grow, like you said earlier. So yeah, my biggest piece of advice, especially for females, is if you're looking at that role, there's a reason you're looking at that role. So you're not just looking at it because you fancy going through a load of job adverts. So apply for the role, because it will open up the conversation. I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give is to network. And to do that is applying for roles, going to find profiles directly on websites, going on LinkedIn, just have your name out there, which actually leads on to a little bit as your personal brand. So if you are on a LinkedIn and making sure that you're posting, whether it's relevant articles, maybe a bit about sort of, if you're in a role, make sure that you're posting on LinkedIn about the role you're currently in, or whatever that looks like. I think personal brand and as a business brand is more important than ever right now, because everything is so busy and it's like there's so much volume on job adverts and volume of candidates, that how are you going to get noticed, which is why we're here. Right. So you have to think a little bit outside of the box. But in terms of adverts, if you are within that field and it's relevant to what you've done or what you're looking for, apply for the role.
And so we're clear that you mentioned the 60%, 100%. That's a Hewlett Packard study. That's a fact. That's not a personal opinion.
Yes, that is great.
And if we try and break that down and debunk myths again, my personal opinion on this situation, if you're not applying for something unless you're 100% relevant to all of the skill set, you will gain so little from joining, because you already have 100% of the skill set. So when you're looking for that thing that you should apply for, you need to have 80, 75, 70% of the skill set, because otherwise there's no growth, there's no development.
You've got to keep the job interesting, right? You've got to be learning stuff. People move to learn and to grow majority of the time. It's not just I'm bored.
100%. And the big thing for me is don't procrastinate on stuff. This might sound really silly, but I've literally just been running a CEO role, and I've had 2 people reach out to me 2 days after the deadline and say, listen, I've been going back and forth on this for the last 3 weeks. I would like to apply. I've worked at the same place for 25 years. I don't know if I'm ready to move or not, but actually this is a great role. And I've had to go back to both and go, deadline's 2 days ago. Shortlist is done. 7 interviews are booked. Too late. Now, effectively, both are like, oh, well, should we meet anywhere and talk? And I'm like, definitely, because I should have stuff in the future for you. But we should have done that 3 weeks ago, and then you could have been in the running for this one, if that makes sense. And I think the big thing, or the advice I would give, is that the whole system is like a triangle, and the further up you get, the less roles there are, the less opportunity there is, the less calls you get. So if you want to progress and you want to be called and seen, etc., you kind of need to go and engage with the right recruiters in the space. I say the right recruiters because I think a lot of people get frustrated because they'll register with 10 different firms because they put their CV on something like an eFinancial and it's available to everyone. But they might register with the wrong firms for their world and their market. And then having spent, I don't know, anything from 5 minutes to an hour on the phone with someone justifying who you are and what you're looking for, you never get another call again. And it becomes frustrating. But that's where, again, that networking piece is like, it's working out who's relevant to your world and making sure you exist in your world and your brand becomes front and center of that future and that growth. Right?
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting you have to do your research to make sure that you are finding the right people to be speaking to, and it does take a lot of effort to be job hunting. It's actually a very big job to do. There's a lot of people that have been looking for the last 6 months and a year, and it's almost the question is, are you in front of the right people, and have you done your research as to who? Because you can't think, we tend to be getting lazier and lazier, right? And you've got candidates that are sitting there like, oh, I'm so senior, they will find me. But you're so busy, you don't know if they're looking. Unless they're on a platform that says that they've updated their profile or put a new profile on, then, there's so many people in this space. How are you going to get found if you're just sitting there? But there are a lot of people that do just wait for a recruiter to call them or email them or something.
Yeah. Oh, and that's why I made that reference point on how you communicate. But probably like one of the most like laughed and joked about things on our side of the fence is how frequently I will phone a candidate and leave a voicemail saying, I've got a role that you'll be perfect for. And I'll do that 2 or 3 days in a row and never hear back. But during that 2-3 day window, they'll physically apply to the advert that I've got up somewhere. And I'll go back to that email or that application saying, I literally can't get hold of you for this. You're perfect for this. Let's speak. And again, I don't hear back from them. And then a couple of days or a couple of weeks later, I'll get either a WhatsApp or a LinkedIn or something different, like as in no one's listened to the voicemails in the first place. No one's checking their personal email. And because I haven't sent them a WhatsApp or whatever it is, they've just missed the boat. I'm desperately trying to get hold of them. They've seen an advert. They think they're right for it. But we never match the pair because we don't communicate in the right way.
Yeah.
Might sound baffling, but I promise you it happens all the time.
It's very strange.
All the time.
Yeah, human behaviour is very complex.
Yeah.
It is very strange, isn't it? But actually, on that point slightly, one thing I advise against is, you will agree with me on this, is constantly updating your profile.
Yep.
Almost to the point where you're spamming recruiters.
Yep.
Because recruiters, one, can class them as not relevant and they won't come up anyway.
Yep.
But also recruiters can now filter by profile created date. So you'll get missed anyway.
Yep.
Like there's absolutely no point. If anything, it just infuriates recruiters if you tweak one thing on your profile and you think you're going to go back up to the top and trying to game the system.
Yep.
It's not working, and it won't work because so you're actually wasting your time doing that, and you become a bit more of an annoyance. Than someone that you want to speak to.
100%, and it's the same premise the other side. Again, you made the point on like being found. The amount of times I can put up 5 ads, and again, let's use risk management. I can put up like AVP level risk role, VP level risk role, director level risk role, ED risk role, MD risk role. One will be market risk, one will be credit risk, one will be operational risk. They'll all be completely different to each other. Fewer buy side, fewer sell side. But I'll have the same candidate apply to all 5 jobs in a row. And I literally get 5 email alerts, bang, 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 through to my computer saying, hey, this person's keen on all these jobs. And I pause and I'm like, I don't know how to engage with this. Like, is this person actually committed to searching properly, or what's going on?
Or are they trying to get noticed for you to pick up the phone and then they tell you which one they actually wanted?
But ultimately, exactly that. And ultimately, that's the best bit. Like every so often, I do it more on adverts now. I write, here's my email address, reach out if you want to speak, right?
Yeah.
And that's the most useful thing to me is people emailing me and sending me the truth, right? Like, I am active or I'm not active. This is what I'm looking for. This is roughly the salary bracket I'm looking to achieve. This is roughly the type of role I'm looking to achieve. Can we have a proper conversation at some point in time? And even if I can't do it that day or the next day, I will definitely always come back to that if they're relevant candidates in my world, because I've done this for north of 20 years and I plan to do it for another 20, right? So fundamentally, at some point, you're going to be relevant and hopefully I'm going to be able to help you. I don't ignore people intentionally. Recruiters get bashed on every format possible, right, for not being in touch. But I can put an advert up, I can have 800 applications. But if I phoned every single one of them, I can't do any work. Like that's it done. And that's kind of then that guidance point is when you're doing your CV, make sure it's clear and relevant, because people do scan and skim and only engage with the ones that they feel that they're likely to be able to help, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess this relates back to the point of managing your expectations when you're searching for a role, keeping those things in mind. Like there are, we keep saying there are hundreds of candidates, hundreds of thousands of candidates on the market that don't take it personally if you're not getting, if someone's not getting back to you. A lot of people will ride on one role and they'll put all their eggs in that basket, they'll apply for it, but then there could be 100 other applications and they're waiting by the phone, waiting to be called. It is quite ruthless out there. And you do have to manage your expectations that you might not be contacted, even if it's the most relevant role. But it is a bit of that, everything happens for a reason, and you will get contacted by the right person at the right time, and it will fall correctly. But this is the point of reaching out to people and reaching out to the relevant recruiters, and then managing your expectations that there might not be something on the market for you right now. And that's fine. But it's almost so ruthless that people do take it very personally sometimes, which is natural behaviour. But you've got to have that expectation.
And the advice I would give people is try and find out as much as you can in advance. I regularly message people saying, can we arrange a conversation, because I've got more than just a piece of paper to give you, right? And when I say it like that, the most frequent message I get back is, give me a salary bracket and give me a job spec, otherwise what's the point in us talking, right? And I get that people don't want their time wasted, but from my angle, if I've got no idea the breadth of your skills, because I don't have your full CV, or I've just got a 2-liner saying I'm a risk manager looking to take the next step, how do I know what to approach you about in the first place? So I'm not going to sit there and go, hey, I've got a role that pays 100 to 120, you're perfect for it, when I don't know what your skills are and what you overlap with or not. But when I say there's more of a message, actually people get really frustrated, and we get people engaged with us after processes when they haven't got interviews. And it's because they're almost, they are a perfect fit, but the firm doesn't want a perfect fit. Now, that might sound really silly, but we get phone calls all the time, right, where people say, I've had a VP in my team quit. And actually, when I look across my team, I've got 8 VPs. 5 of them are fighting for that director promotion at the moment. And realistically, 1, at best 2, can achieve that in the next 1, if not 2 years or cycles of promotions. So one of those individuals has quit to go elsewhere for a good reason or a bad reason, or moving internally, or whatever the reason they're going is. And I've got a gap. And the gap in the job spec is spot on to a high performing VP, because that's what the person leaving is. And that's how often job specs are written, by the person going, can you put a list of all the things that you do so we can go and find someone like you? But actually, when we go to someone and go, whatever, your bracket's 80 to 110, here's someone looking for 110 that's spot on for it, they don't look at your CV and go, oh, they're too good on top of a bracket. They look and go, actually, this person would be perfect, but I've already got 4 other VPs fighting for that director promotion. If I bring this person in, it's just going to upset the apple cart, because 1, if not 2, if not 3, if not all of these people can't achieve what they want to achieve. So as much as the job spec says this is what we're looking for, on reflection, I actually want a junior VP, or I want a senior AVP looking to make that step up. And they're the conversations that the recruiter has where you can add value outside of just a piece of paper, if that makes sense. Biggest comment I'll make in that vein as well is, so frequently the job spec is the job spec from when the person joined the job 10, 12, 15 years ago.
How often do they rewrite job descriptions?
100%. I regularly, honestly, whatever, I was reading something this morning. I was reading someone's CV and they're talking about how they used to work at the FSA. And I get that it was called the FSA at the time that they worked there, but it's now the Financial Conduct Authority. And in that vein and in that guise, all these points about the FSA this, the FSA that, not as clear or not as likely to be found now, because recruiters that weren't around when that was there aren't going to search for FCA in the hope that they find someone that did it 15, 20, 30 years ago. They're going to search for FCA because that's what it is. And I make that reference because it's the same with skills, it's the same with experience, it's the same with products. Like, if you're not clear on what you do, you're not going to get found in the first place, right?
Yeah.
What advice can we give to people then? People watching this now that are active, are on eFinancial Careers, but aren't getting phone calls. Where would you guide them? What do they go and do next?
My pieces of advice in Snapshot would be, don't overcomplicate it when it comes to adding your profile. And in your profile, fill out as much as you can. I guess there's a conversation around how long your CV is, because that's from, I guess, more of your experience. But there is a piece around how you would write a CV, but that's a separate conversation. But trying to keep that.
Is there anything you see your end? Long CVs, short CVs makes a difference?
We've seen it, we've seen it. I mean, as you probably have, and I've worked in recruitment prior to Financial Careers, so I've seen my fair share of CVs, but a photo's not going to help. That's one thing. But we've seen very, very lengthy CVs, which when we do demos for the platform as an example, that's where we see a lot of people that go through what they want to see in a CV, and they're instantly scroll to the bottom for the skills, or within the first snapshot they want to see if they're fit for the role. So have they got this previous experience, or the similar companies, similar skill sets, if they've managed or a team or whatever that looks like. So CV again is a minefield, and I would advise speaking to a consultant as to what their clients that they're working with are more likely to look for. Some get formatted anyway by some recruiters. So that's a bigger conversation, I think.
Well, look, it is, and the simple guidance on that is you're dealing with human beings.
Yes.
So someone you're going to send your CV to, and they're going to say, I only take 2-page CVs, and other people are going to say, I'd read 200 pages of a CV. The biggest advice I give to people is, think about what you're applying for and when you're applying for it, right? If I put it on myself, 20 odd years ago, I worked as a barman and I worked as a DJ, and probably the first CV I ever wrote to get my first ever job would have had a load of bullet points about my customer service skills as a barman and how being trusted with money means I'm a trustworthy individual and stuff like this. Yeah. But to create a one-page CV when you have hardly got any experience is hard, right?
Yes, yeah.
It's frightening for me how many people still have that CV and have just added on top, right? So I've 20 odd years, I'd have put 5 years in for my role at Badenoch and Clark back in the day, and then I'd have 15 years worth of experience in my Black Swan role, but I'd make it onto page 3 or make it onto page 4 because I've still got all these bullets about working in a bar, which realistically for anything I'm applying for now or would want to in the future is completely irrelevant. And that's the big point, is when people are saying 2-page CVs and stuff like that, the CV is the key to get in the door to get the interview, right? So what you need to display is, I've got the skills that make me worthy of having a discussion.
Yeah.
And when you give someone a 15-page document that says, you've got to put the effort in to find where in my CV I've got the skills because I'm just providing information, you stand out as someone that to a lazy eye doesn't get spotted.
Yeah.
Because fundamentally, if there's 500 applications and you open, I don't know, the first 4 and they all meet the bullets and they're all short, sharp, clear and concise, you're in the room in the first place. You're getting the interview. The one that you've got to go trawling and find it doesn't often get the interview. And that's the only guidance I give on what matters in terms of length of CV is find the relevancy to what you're trying to achieve now and trying to achieve next.
And that's the point, I guess, on the application side is your CV, there might be 6 different versions of your CV, depending on the different roles. Same role it might be, but they might be looking for certain skill sets in each different role. So it's making the effort to tailor your CV in that application to what role that you're applying for. I think that's a big piece as well, because some people will just use, which is fine, use the same CV because it is what you do and you're not going to change your skill sets. But if you tailor your CV slightly to the role that you're looking at and what they're looking for, then that might get your foot in the door.
100%. And it's digging out your different skills at the right times, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like whatever, having a football CV and a football coaching CV and a sales CV or whatever in that guise, because all of those are relevant skills depending on what you're looking for at the time and what you're applying for.
I wouldn't use my football CV for a sales role. Well, I might use bits of it, but
it's amazing how often people do.
Yeah.
And ultimately really fluff up the information about what they've learnt on a football or a coaching or whatever side for something that just isn't relevant to what they're applying for at the time.
Yeah.
So going back to tips and advice, I'm just thinking before you said only 30% of people actually fill out their full profile.
Yeah, the full
So if you're
profile.
watching this now,
Fill out your profile. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because like we said before, it matches what recruiters are filtering on their side. Like we have a bunch of filters which match what we've put in the candidate profile. Our job is to match the two. So we're going to make it as relevant as we can to match the two. Yeah. So yeah, my biggest piece of advice would be fill out as much as you're comfortable filling out, basically.
Yeah. And then anything further from that? Anything more I can do on the side?
Well, just the networking piece, getting in front of the right people and the most relevant people. You're consultants for a reason. You consult on hiring. So you need to be on the phone to those right people. And we've hosted a bunch of virtual career events in the past. That's a good way to... we're doing predominantly graduates at the moment. So I think there's one in October. And that's where you're in the room with employers, in the room, the online room, where you can have one-on-one chats. So the things like that, keep an eye out for any networking event. There is a lot more face-to-face now for recruiters and for employers. So just being in the right room at the right time might help.
Yeah, and having got that exposure, again, guidance from the consultant side helps with the interview process. Like if I wanted a job at eFinancial Careers, for example, at the end or during an interview when someone says to me, why do you want to work here? If my response is, having spent time with Rosie and understood what a wonderful place this is to work, I'm interested because of X, Y, Z, is 10 times more credible than I'm just ready for the next step, or I've applied to an ad, I don't know much about you, which again is so frequently the case. But before we turn the cameras on, you talked about job alerts and following companies and stuff like that.
Yes, so yeah, absolutely. So we on our platform, you've got recruiter profiles and company profiles. If you follow the recruiter and company profiles, you get alerted every time that they post a job, and it's in real time. So if you posted a job right now, the candidate that has followed your company or your recruiter profile will receive that alert. So that's one thing. And job alerts generally. So our system is known for quite good at matching your job title to the job adverts that are posted. So if you turn on job alerts, we'll contact you if a new role's been posted with your same job title. And again, that's defluffing your job title. So if you put up risk manager, you will be notified, and set up job alerts for risk manager, you will receive risk manager roles.
Yeah, and it's important in theory then to do both sides, right? Because depending on which advisor you take advice from, there's endless stats out there about 20%, 30%, 50%, 100% of jobs don't get advertised, right?
Yeah.
Depending on who you choose to listen to. But ultimately, if it's not via a job advert, still uploading your CV onto the database without applying for a job at all makes you searchable to all the recruiters out there that are paying to be part of the platform.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So it's always worth putting your profile onto the site, because like I say, that you've got hundreds of staffing firms on there, and obviously direct employers too. So.
And when we're searching, again, so people are clear from our side of the fence, like if I stick an advert up and I get 500 applications, it takes me an awful lot of time to go through them and work out if I've got anyone relevant. But before I even look at those applications, I can go onto the CV database and I can literally type in current job title, risk manager, notice period immediately available, skills, market risk, whatever, keywords, equity derivatives, search. And I can search by when they made their CV, when they created it, when they uploaded it onto the system, when they last made a change to the system, when they last looked at the system, etc., etc. So I regularly, if I've got something that needs someone tomorrow, my search is that specific, and then looked at was on eFinancial in the last 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, etc. It might bring one CV. If it brings 100 CVs, and I find 6 from that are spot on and definitely have the skills because I proactively search for it, I've then got to find the time to go through my 500 applications. But I promise you, anyone watching, the priority is the ones that are definitely right. And I know they're right because of a proactive search.
And I can tell you, every recruiter will go to the CV database first. Their daily workflow is straight onto the CV database, searching what they had already previously searched. So you've always got your set sort of what we call Boolean searches, which is kind of algebra for CVs.
Yeah.
So that's always the first part of someone's day, is going onto the CV database, going onto previous searches, or going into a new search. But and if you've updated your profile in the last sort of day or 2 days, you were likely to get found. But even if your profile's been on there for 3-6 months, there's always clever recruiters will always find you.
Yeah. And that's the truth. To speak from my side of the fence, the first thing I do every Monday morning before I do anything else is log on. Literally, I've got 4 or 5 like set daily searches, whatever, for example, risk, for example, compliance, CV updated within the last 3 days, i.e. the whole of the weekend that I've just missed. And I head through anyone that might have appeared, because in my head, that's my chance to get ahead of any of my competitors. If I spot that CV at 7 in the morning and someone else doesn't log on till 9 o'clock at night, I'm having a discussion with that candidate, hopefully before they've even realised that they exist in the first place. And then I've got 5 interviews by the time another agency calls. In theory, they don't need to register with other agencies because their search is already active and flying.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we're to summarise and make sure we're clear with people here, fill out your profile, because that is how you get found. Like people literally search on that criteria, and the bits and pieces that people don't want to give, your notice period, your salary and stuff like that, ultimately are things people search against. So if you don't put anything in salary at all and someone puts whatever, looking for candidates up to 100 grand, you do get found or you don't get found.
They get found. If you've put in a search saying I need people up to 100,000, if you haven't put in a salary, you're not going to get.
If you're genuinely ready for your next step, applying for the role may not lead to you getting that job, but it will lead to that recruiter being aware of you. And if they're genuinely a specialist in that market, it will lead to them getting in touch at some point in time to say, I've now got your next step. I've got people that I've helped 4 or 5 times over 20 years, and it's been me that's made every single move for them. And they're not on LinkedIn, they're not on eFinancial, they're not on a lot of those sites, because ultimately they're like, look, I trust you, and I know that when I'm ready for a move will be similar to a time where you phone me and say, actually, there is something that your next step is for. Now, when I pause on that, if I place someone with a client, I don't engage with them again until they come to me, right? It's one of the things we sign on most contracts is we obviously don't bite the hand that feeds us. We don't take from places that we make placements to. So if you're not telling people, actually, I'm ready for my next step and I need to find it, you're not going to get found.
Yeah.
And again, that's where something like an eFinancial becomes beneficial to people looking to get found is you're putting yourself visibly in the eyes of all of the recruiters, not just one company, anyone that works in that world and commits to it, right?
Exactly. And on the application side, if you're worried about spamming a recruiter, you're definitely not spamming a recruiter. If you've got that mindset of I'm worried that I'm applying too much, you're definitely not applying too much. There's always someone out there that's applying for way more than you. Like the example you gave earlier.
Yeah. Oh, and it is like, all I mean is if you're relevant at all, apply.
Yeah.
Like if you work in
Start the
compliance
conversation.
at all, risk at all, I want to speak to you. I genuinely do. But I just mean if you've done 3 months in a crypto firm and you're applying to an advert that clearly says you need to have worked in a hedge fund for 20 years, I'm not going to come back to you on that because I'm overwhelmed with applications for people that want to go for it. And I'm going to start with the relevant people and get as far down the chain. But I'll definitely keep your details. And if I get something that says I need someone with some decent crypto experience to move to something else, I will reach out to you, right? Yeah. If you don't want to be found on crypto stuff, tell me that. As part of your application or anything, people ask us, should we write cover notes? And people spend hours writing cover notes. Hands up, don't read them at all, right? But when I say don't read them at all, I will skim the first 2 lines. If the first 2 lines says like London-based candidate looking to move to Dubai, I ping it on to my colleague in Dubai. Yeah. If the first 2 lines says compliance officer wants out of compliance, I look for what they're looking for and I pass that on. But if the first 2 lines says highly skilled, talented individual who's wonderful in person, honestly, passionate, well presented, like polished, articulate, boom, 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 a load of key marketing words effectively, I get a few lines in and go, okay, park that, down to relevant experience. What do they do? Okay, yeah, I could or I couldn't help this person. And that's so much of my thought process. Yeah. And I openly admit that my thought process is, can I help them at all? Not, are they right for the job that they've applied for?
Yeah. And on the cover note, actually, the cover letter, that's your point to get noticed. Like that's your, this is why I'm relevant for the role. So if I'm an individual player, passionate person or whatever, you'd hope that everyone is that, has that sort of personality if they're applying for a new role. So it might, I don't know what your thoughts on this, it might even be worth like 4 bullet points on why you're relevant to that particular role or exactly what you're looking for. Like you say, I want out of risk and I want to move to Dubai. Cool. That's fine.
Well, you mentioned before a lot of recruitment firms format CVs, right? Yeah. And we do, right? Now, when I say that out loud, normally people are like, what, you change my information? No. I genuinely don't edit CVs, but we do format them. And when I say we format them, our view again is you want to stand out for your skill set rather than anything weird and wonderful, if that makes sense, right? So as silly as it sounds, whatever, I'm a passionate football and rugby fan. If I wrote on my CV, passionate rugby and football fan, as much as I think people don't consider it, you could apply for a role and someone goes, oh, I literally hate football fans, so I'm not going to interview them, even though on paper I'm perfect for it. It's a preconception that comes, right? So we format, i.e. we just pull out relevant roles and experience. We add a profile box to the top of most CVs, which I think is similar to what you've just said on the bullets. So rather than a cover note, we would add a profile box and we'll put 3 to 5 bullets, which in essence is a snapshot of you, if that makes sense, right? And when I say it like that, let's put it on the operations world, because that's a really useful one where people often don't do it. When you're applying to roles, that space is so competitive to get into like the elite funds. People apply that are perfect, but they don't write on their CV the products that they've engaged with. They don't write the systems that they've used and engaged with. And they don't write about the engagement they've had with people, i.e. I physically sat on the desk dealing with the traders or whoever it is that they've engaged with. So our bullets in that vein normally read X amount of years experience literally doing this job. Probably not written out like that, but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Like engages on a daily basis with whatever, FX rates, bonds, credit, whatever it might be, sits on the trading floor and engages with the front office on a regular basis, or sits in the middle office looking to make the move to engage with the front office, etc., etc. But in essence, we pick those 5 snapshots, and it's the same as I say in all the videos we do about tailoring a CV. We read the job spec of what it is you're going for and go, how relevant are you for this? And let's make it very clear. If the hiring manager or anyone out there is literally going to read 5 lines, let's make sure those 5 lines say, I do everything you want me to do. Let's talk.
Talk to me.
What happens at page 2 of the CV? Goodness knows. But people ask us for CV tips and advice. Most CVs have got your name written in huge letters, taking up like a third of the page. And then there's a big section like home address, contact number, email. You can get halfway down a page before you've even written a single word about your skill set. Take your personal contact details and put them on the second page. Because if someone wants to find you, they'll scroll all the way to the bottom of the CV and they'll find you.
Yeah.
Make sure your skills, your relevant experience, and what it is you're looking to do is the most visible thing.
Yeah.
Because that's what people need to read when they're reading your CV, right?
I agree. Yeah, and on the formatting piece, it's just also to make it look a lot cleaner. Like everything's as, you know, whether it's, I don't know, Arial 10 or everything's in the same font, and it's, you know, it's easy to read essentially, whereas there are a lot of different CVs out there. It's just kind of a bit of a formality more than anything as well. But yeah, there is a preconceived idea that recruiters change CVs, and having been a recruiter, not the case. It's just making it clean.
Oh, exactly that. I know. And don't get me wrong, I do know that there are firms that do it because I hear clients moan about people doing it, right? And we don't do that. But we regularly phone up candidates and say, you need to change your CV, right? Like before I send this CV to a job, you need to put your products on there. You need to put your systems on there. Don't over-egg it. Just be honest. But at the moment, I can't tell what you're a specialist in. And I give the same example to people all the time, right? I could be a teacher, right? And if I'm a history teacher and one day I get asked to go and teach a geography class, having qualified as a teacher, I'm more than comfortable going into that environment and holding the attention of the students. But when I'm asked loads of questions about whatever tectonic plates, I don't know it because it's not my speciality, right? And that's all I mean in financial services. You might be a compliance officer, you might be a risk manager, you might be a operations professional or whatever. But if you're a teacher, you would tell people, I teach geography, I teach history, I teach something.
Yeah.
So picture that scenario and tell us, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is my skill set, and this is what I'm looking to achieve or do or grow and develop with.
Yeah.
So let's summarize with, don't pause, don't hesitate, and if you haven't completed your profile on eFinancial Careers, go fill it out now, because instantly you're in the top 31% of people that do it, because we know at least 70% aren't at the moment.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
No
Pleasure,
worries.
Rosie.
Yeah.